While we can do the things that give us pleasure and pursue the things that make us happy, joy is a different matter. It comes to us. And often it comes to us when we least expect it. So how can Paul say in Philippians 4, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say it, rejoice. He uses the imperative mood with an exclamation point behind it. But how can he do that? How can he command us to have an experience over which we have no control? Well, he can't, of course. It doesn't make any sense, but he, being Paul, does it anyway. Paul writes these words from prison. He's uncertain of his future and for the moment at least unable to fulfill his mission. And yet he commands the Philippians to rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say it, he insists, rejoice. It might help us to uncover the secret of his own joy. And you can find it right there at the end of verse 5. Rejoice in the Lord always, he says. Again, I say it, rejoice. And then he tells them, the Lord is near. Barbara Brown Taylor seems to understand this in an article called Surprised by Joy, which I found in that same magazine, by the way. She says that the word seems almost irreverent in a word where so much is going wrong. Who can be joyful while babies starve and teenagers shoot each other and whole tribes of people try to wipe each other off the face of the earth? It's hard to jump up and down joyful about any of that. Only joy has never had very much to do with what is going on in the world at the time. That is what makes it different from happiness or pleasure or fun. All of those depend on positive conditions. Good health, good job, happy family, lots of toys. The only condition for joy is the presence of God. Joy happens when God is present and people know it, which means that it can erupt in a depressed economy, in the middle of a war, or in an intensive care waiting room. Taylor says when God is present, doing God's stuff, people cannot seem to contain themselves. They sing and dance. They open their mouths and poetry falls out. They drop what they are doing and rejoice right where they are, no matter who is watching. It is a moment marked above all by that jumping up and down joy that is the surest sign of the presence of God. It doesn't happen when we get what we want. It is much more likely to happen when we do not get what we want. And we find ourselves laughing instead of crying because God's ideas are so much better than ours. Only we have a hard time seeing that until our wishes have crashed and burned. It is there, in that wilderness, in that empty-handed, I give up surrender, that joy is most likely to occur. Don't ask me why, she says. It just does. And that is how you know God is present, because no one else knows how to come into a dark room and turn on all the lights, surprising everyone inside with the last thing any one of them would have expected, unkillable joy. I think that's what happened for Paul, don't you? There he was, locked up in that prison, wondering whether he was going to live or die, when he began to sense that the Lord was near. And it gave him goosebumps of joy. This may explain why we read the passage from Luke's Gospel on this third Sunday of Advent, the Sunday of joy, a passage in which John the Baptist seems to be preaching anything but good news. You brood of vipers, he says to the crowd, who warned you to flee from the wrath to come? Bear fruits worthy of repentance. Do not begin to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our ancestor. I tell you, God is able to raise up from these stones children to Abraham. Even now the axe is lying at the root of the trees, and every tree, therefore, that does not bear good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire. Now, that doesn't sound very joyful, does it? But people were coming anywhere, from all over, to hear John preach, and they were asking what they should do. They seemed to sense that the Lord was near, and it gave them goosebumps. What should you do? John thundered. What? You should get ready for his arrival. That's what you should do. Whoever has 2 coats must share with anyone who has none, and whoever has food must do the same. To the tax collectors, he said, collect no more than the amount prescribed for you. To the soldiers, he said, do not extort money from anyone by threats or false accusation, and be satisfied with your wages. In other words, clean up your act. Clean up your life. Let it overflow with generosity and kindness and love, so that when the Lord comes, he may find you faithful.